Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on the Slice of Healthcare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me, we have a very special guest here today, Stephen Smith, the co-founder and CEO of NOCD. How's it going?
Thanks for having me, Jared. Appreciate it. Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to have you on. As you were telling me, you were in Chicago today, and I was complaining to you about how it was 55 here in Florida, and you're like, it's a little colder here.
It's a cold fall day here. I was walking over to the office and I was just like, I ended up running just because it was so cold. But happy to be here today and really excited to talk further about NoCD as well as other innovation happening in healthcare.
Well, let's dive in. Tell the audience a little bit about you, in case some haven't heard of you, and we'll talk more about NoCD.
Sure. So my name's Stephen Smith. I'm the co-founder and CEO of NoCD. And what we do at NoCD is we help people who have obsessive compulsive disorder and related conditions get identified and then get treated in an effective, affordable, and convenient manner. And my background, I actually have OCD. And for everyone listening, OCD is a term which almost everyone recognizes, but also almost everyone misunderstands. But yet, most people who misunderstand it don't realize they misunderstand it. So it's one of those weird phenomenons in the English language where you have many people using a term they just don't know much about. And they don't really realize that, right? So OCD, it's viewed as a personality quirk in society or an adjective used to describe somebody who's type A. But in actuality, it couldn't be more different. People who have OCD have fears that are oftentimes what we call ego dystonic. They violate the person's core values and character. And to make those fears go away, people do very specific actions called compulsions because the fears generate tremendous amounts of distress. And the fears could be violent, they could be sexual, they could be religious, relationship based, existential, so totally different from that, personality quirk type. They're just crippling fears that make people distrust the core elements of themselves, right? They play on repeat and creates a tremendous amount of distress. Like for instance, a mother with a newborn child, she may fear, what if I throw my baby out the window? Right? Like, so very intense, and oftentimes taboo fears. So I ended up going through this whole experience with OCD as a sophomore in college. So everything was going really well with my life. I played football at a very small school down in San Antonio, Texas. I had a great social life, great family support, fortunately, and was doing well. And one day, as I came home for summer vacation, I started having those unwanted fears. Right, I had no idea what was going on. I just thought for some reason these thoughts were stuck in my head, without explanation, and I just was at a breaking point. Like I didn't know what to do, and so I went to see a provider in my area. And that provider said, "You just have anxiety. I want you to take a rubber band. I want you to snap it across your wrist every time you feel anxious from these thoughts." And it was one of the worst things you could tell someone with OCD. And so I got worse. I ended up getting misdiagnosed about 5 other times after that one provider by different providers, and eventually then hit rock bottom where I had to stop going to school. I stopped playing football, and I was stuck in my room from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep, with extreme depression too, because as OCD often goes, when you suffer with it and are misdiagnosed and mistreated, you develop comorbidities. And at that point in time, I started to seek help in alternative ways because I didn't know what else to do. And so I started searching my fears online and try to find explanations for them so that they would hopefully stop. And in that process, I stumbled upon a group of other people like me going through the same thing, and they defined their symptoms as OCD. And I was like, OCD, like everyone, I thought it was just a personality quirk, right? I had no idea it was such a disabling chronic condition that affected 1 in 40 globally, caused people to be 10 times more likely to die by suicide, and was ranked by the World Health Organization as a top 10 reason for disability. I had no idea about how severe it was. And then, so I felt understood from understanding other people's stories. My next step then was, well, where do I go get help? And so as I started to search more, I realized despite the severity of OCD, it's actually one of the most manageable serious mental illnesses because there's a specific type of treatment called exposure and response prevention therapy, ERP, that works super well at helping people with this condition learn how to respond to their fears so that over time they don't bother them as much. And people in that process learn how to accept uncertainty. And that's exactly the treatment that I tried to find. And in that process, Jared, there was only one specialist in my area who did ERP. And, she had a $350 cash pay price per session, all out of pocket, no insurance coverage, a 7-month wait list, and was pretty much inaccessible because I was pretty much housebound out of college and at the time and was just like in a challenging spot. And so the only way to get better was to see this provider. Ended up, fortunately, because of the family support, I was able to get to the provider. She diagnosed me. She eventually treated me with ERP. And it was a tough process because between sessions you're on your own, but nonetheless was able to get through therapy and I was able to regain my life. And that allowed me to go back to school. I went to Pomona College in Southern California and finish up my degree, finish up playing football. And at that point, when I was in school, I realized that this issue, OCD, after doing more research on it, isn't just necessarily a clinical issue, right? Because you have great treatments available, and people oftentimes, are get better with the treatments. And it's a unique example in that it's actually mostly an operational issue. We just haven't done a good enough job getting people to the right treatments and identifying them appropriately, and then building trust with them, and eventually managing them in an effective, affordable, and convenient manner. And that's what prompted me to start NoCD, right? Because I was like, well, we could do something about these operational challenges. We can, create a system where people who are stigmatized with OCD can actually get the help they need, not by trying to navigate the system themselves, but by the system coming to them. And that's what effectively we've done. So since we started the company, fast forward about 5 years later, now we have about 150 million commercial members under coverage today that can access a licensed therapist that specializes in OCD and ERP as a covered benefit. At the same time, the wait time has gone down from 7 months to 2 years on average to less than 7 days on average because of what we've done at NOCD. And we've created a solution that isn't just as effective as a standard of care, but in many cases is more effective because of how efficient it is. So people inside the NoCD platform can come in and see one of our licensed therapists that specializes in OCD. We do all the training in-house to help them really understand how to treat the population using exposure and response prevention, as well as some other interventions to serve their secondary conditions. And then between sessions, when that therapist isn't available, people can get always on support from different peer communities, different self-help tools, and content. And it's created this kind of tech and touch model that's blended together to give our members a really personalized experience that addresses exactly what they need at the different points in the journey. And so we are all 50 states international, and our goal is now to really end global suffering caused by OCD, while at the same time building a new mental health care system for the most severe and stigmatized people. And I think that's one of the big takeaways of what we've done. We've really completely transformed how mental health care is delivered for one population today that is considered severe and heavily stigmatized. And if we can do it for one, I think we have a new recipe that can be done for more.
Congratulations, by the way, on these last couple years and bringing the company to this point. And it's so cool that you've been able to build something that stemmed from a personal experience. It seems like the best companies, right? That is one of the recipes for success. Is was there that personal moment that led you to build out this company? And
Thank
I
you.
mean, and it also seems like there were a lot of negatives that happened along the way that pushed you to want to start this company. That also seems like the other part of in the recipe, right? It's those negative pain points. You're like, we need to solve this. Now, how I want to dig a little bit in because we always hear and we hear about any type of virtual solution, for instance, right? We always hear about the ability to, as you were saying, um, match with a therapist and get the care that you need. But you also mentioned something else when that therapist is in between a session and they're not available, the other resources. How important are those other resources for when the therapist is not available, and what do those look like?
They're critical. I mean, because if you think about it, your therapist is with you for less than 1% of the time per week. So in between sessions, you're asked to do therapy homework. You're asked to manage episodes, especially with a chronic condition like OCD, sporadically. And those episodes happen unexpectedly. You could be walking down the grocery store aisle and boom, you're triggered, right? You also at times feel isolated because you just don't know who to go to with some of these issues because they're oftentimes taboo and difficult to talk about. So how do you create an experience that between sessions gives people that support that they need? And that's effectively what we've been striving to do at NoC for almost now 10 years. So it's been a long journey in really building out this product because we know how important it is to do it right. And so we, for instance, at NoCD offer people what they call a member advocate, someone who has lived experience or who's a friend of someone with lived experience who can be there to support people along the journey. They're not clinicians, but they're peers. And in that process, people can, in that treatment process, I should say, people can ask their member advocates questions. They can, if there's a problem, for instance, getting into treatment for a certain session, they can lean on them for support in that moment. They have needs to vent, they could vent to their member advocate. So it's like we have individuals too that can be available just in case someone needs to talk to another person that understands them. We have peer feeds. People inside NoCD's platform can at any point in the day, post a question or comment on a post in the NoCD community feed. We could also read content, and it's all different types of content: static content, video content, um, community generated content. And so there are different levers that you can pull for support. At the same time, if you need to do homework, it's often challenging to do it all in one place, right? So like back in the day, you'd have to write homework extra, or you'd have to write journals. You'd have to, find a loop tape recorder and listen to it. You'd have to draw pictures. All these things happened in a disorganized format, right? So what we did at NoCD is we created almost like a virtual gym for people who are going to do treatment to do it all in one place when they're not there with their therapist in session. So you can, do your homework, and then your therapist, hours later, if they're looking at their laptop, could actually see what you did, right? So it's a totally integrated model. So there are ways in which you have to build for the member between sessions, and it's a function of tech and touch. So you do have the community support that helps provide the touch and the connection that people need oftentimes, especially when they're dealing with a very stigmatized condition like OCD. You have also the tech to give you support in doing treatment between sessions and getting in episode guidance and whatnot. So, and also I should say collecting data. You could see in real time your insights using technology.
Super interesting. I definitely wanted to, when we had you on, I wanted to be able to ask that because I feel like it's not um, something that we hear often about, but I know like companies like yours are really active in building out that content library and those other resources beyond just the direct therapist communication. I wanted to shift focus a little bit to a cool team up that you have with Howie Mandel, and I feel like everyone knows who Howie Mandel is at this point, and how open he is about struggles and what he's gone through. That being said, he's done a lot to change the public perception of OCD, right? How important is this advocacy and public awareness and what your mission is at OCD, and kind of what is this? Sorry, this is a long question, but what is this impact of this partnership?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Look, advocacy is critical to what we're doing. And the reason why is it takes on average today 14 to 17 years for people with OCD to get evidence-based treatment. That's a stat that's been replicated with multiple research studies. And that's a problem, right? Because here you're dealing with a population that is super severe, right? Again, people are 10 times more likely to die by suicide when left untreated. Yet it takes 14 to 17 years for them to get evidence-based treatment. It doesn't make any sense, especially in the 21st century. So advocacy is critical. At the same time, there is extremely effective therapy for OCD. It's actually one of the more treatable SMIs. And so all that considered, like, you really need to make a movement to change how people think about what this condition is really like. Because if you can change how they think about it, then you can also change people's understanding about what it's like. Just like how you've seen other conditions become, or other terms in society become redefined over the years. Like if you look back 20 years ago, there were terms people would use casually as a joke that are today, frowned upon. And I just think it's something that needs to happen with OCD. So when we realized that, we initially said, well, who can we turn to help us? Because we really need to get society to make not only a change but a quick change, given there are lives at stake. And that brainstorm led down the road of we need to find a celebrity who, one, understands what this condition is really like, either through personal or family relationships or relationships with close friends, and two, someone who could use their voice to amplify what OCD really means, and do so on not only a national but also international scale. And that's where Howie Mandel came into the picture, and we're very appreciative of our work with him. So he has been our NoCD partner, right? We work with him on awareness commercials. We work with him on different static posts, but the whole goal is how can we make society more aware about what OCD is actually like? Because if we can draw awareness to it, then we can get people identified earlier on in their journey. Because when they know about the symptoms of OCD, right, the sticky thoughts, the fears that feel stuck in one's head that are oftentimes ego dystonic, right, violating someone's core values and character. If they can understand those thoughts actually have a name, and it's not the name of their fear, it's actually OCD, then they can go in and find the courage needed to seek treatment. And that's the step that people need to take in order to get better. So we're trying to attack the problem at its root and get most people to become identified. Another reason why it's important is we need to also inform clinicians about what OCD is like. So unlike other psychiatric illnesses, OCD is heavily misdiagnosed even by doctorate level professionals. And the reason why is because there's not much awareness about how the condition manifests. So, for instance, people think about OCD in terms of perfectionism and contamination. They don't think about OCD in terms of violent, sexual, religious, intrusive thoughts. But yet, the majority of the prevalence suffers with the latter. And so, if we can actually get the conversation started about OCD, we're not going to only inform consumers; we're going to inform providers, and that's another key element of advocacy. So, the advocacy is going to be what drives the OCD crisis to being solved.
Well said, and congrats on that relationship. By the way, that is so it's so cool that you're able to work with him, and I'm
Thank you.
sure the feeling is mutual. When one of the things I wanted to bring up too is it's a little while past, but you were on a panel with Howie and uh, how what was that experience like at Health earlier this year? And just not just that Howie was on the panel with you. You had a good group as well. I think was Alyssa Jaffrey from Seven Wire was and who there was one other person. She's amazing. I'm blanking.
Yes, Salome Tubu, she's
Yes,
amazing. Yeah,
yes,
she runs the Behavioral Health Tech Conference.
yes, and which just happened recently, right? Um, what was that experience like being on a stage with all of those folks?
It was unbelievable. It was really unbelievable. First, we're appreciative of Health for giving us the platform to raise awareness for OCD, and second, I think that it was a really balanced conversation, right? So we talked about OCD, what it's like. We talked about our personal stories, and it was also intriguing because we talked about just in general how OCD is misunderstood and how mental health care in general should be as available and easy to talk about as dental health, right? So it just there was a nice kind of flow with the conversation, and we also were able to do that thanks to the audience. So it was a good panel.
Last thing I have for you, Stephen, before we wrap things up, what's next for the company that you can share with us here today?
Thanks, Jared. What's next? I mean, we are right now focused deeply on serving the OCD community, right? And I say that because in the OCD community, comorbidity is the norm, it's not the exception, right? So most people have comorbidities when they suffer with OCD. They have anxiety, they have depression, they have PTSD, but they oftentimes have that in conjunction with very, very, challenging OCD symptoms. And so to make our treatment more personalized, we begin serving different segments of the OCD community in a deeper way by providing more training and by augmenting our operational processes within our network. And that's giving us a chance to offer just better and better care for our community members, right? So we look at, we have two opportunities, right? Like, honestly, we could go broad or go deep. We've chosen the path of going deep because we want to make sure that our care is exceptional. It's also giving us a chance to realize how the mental health crisis can be solved, right? There are many amazing companies today in behavioral healthcare. It's a very well funded segment of the healthcare industry, especially as of recently. I think that we haven't yet, as a society, though, done a good enough job identifying those who have the most severe and stigmatized mental health issues, and as a result, they don't get connected to care at the right time at the right place. That's evidence based. And so you kind of have this gap in the system for oftentimes the people who need help the most. And it's creating, a situation where although we've had a lot of great strides made in behavioral healthcare, we're really still not tackling the biggest problems that need to be solved. So at NOCD, we feel like actually we have effectively done that for the OCD community. We are identifying people in a more frictionless manner in the places where they want to raise their hand. We're bringing evidence based care to them in the format that's most efficient and effective. That's virtually. And we're giving people a chance to then get routed within the healthcare system based off of their needs if they have additional needs. And and the model has worked, and we can show that based off of our scale over the years and the clinical results, most importantly. So we're broadly thinking, how can we fix this problem? Because we know this issue occurs not just within OCD, but it occurs across the whole mental health landscape, and especially for the most severe and stigmatized issues. So without giving too much, like we're really thinking about using our model and our proof point, right? Going deep into OCD and serving effectively to eventually then, do similar work in other populations.
Well, I'm excited that we had the chance to chat here today, and hopefully we can have you come on in the near future and we can stay in touch. But really, so excited for you, the team, and all that you're helping, all the many people that you're helping today, and keep doing big things.